Και θα συνεχίσουμε με την επόμενη ομιλήτρια, οπότε θα περάσω πάλι στα αγγλικά. We are very proud to welcome Dr. Liu-Thompkins, Professor of Marketing, Old Dominion University, Director of Loyalty Science Lab. Dr. Liu-Thompkins is an expert on building customer loyalty and habits through effective marketing programs. She specializes in combining customer data with consumer psychology to derive useful customer insights and actionable marketing strategies. She has published her research in top marketing journals, such as the Journal of Marketing, Journal of the Academy of Marketing Science, Journal of Retailing, etc. She has made media appearances in New York Times, Washington Post, NPR, Marketplace, and with good reason programs and various podcasts. We are very, very happy to have you today with us, Dr. Liu-Thompkins. We are really sorry for the delay. We had a problem in the morning and then everything, was behind. We are really sorry for that. I know that you had things to do afterwards. You are one of the most experienced professors on customer loyalty. And we are really looking forward to listen to your presentation, which has the topic, using loyalty programs to rebuild customer habit post-pandemic.
Thank you very much, Natasha. No problem at all. Technology works great when it works. So I'm very happy to be here today, virtually greeting the loyalty practitioners in Greece. This is actually my first time experiencing this. I hope you will find this presentation informative. So before I get to the topic of my conversation, just give you a quick background about the Loyalty Science Lab. We are actually a university research lab located within Old Dominion University in the US. And what we do is conducting loyalty-related research, brand loyalty, customer loyalty, and loyalty programs, both ourselves as well as in collaboration with businesses. So I would be very happy if you find the information here helpful to follow us on LinkedIn for further research insights related to loyalty issues. I would like to start my discussion today actually with a question that was posed to me during my recent interview with Marketing Week. The question was, when a lot of businesses are actually their only loyalty strategy is based on financial rewards, in other words, transactional type of loyalty programs, what is a more holistic strategy in terms of managing customer loyalty? And obviously there are a couple of different parts to that question, but I will say one of the first most important thing for a business in managing loyalty is the customer loyalty model. And what do I mean by that? A lot of times when we look at companies' business model, they talk about how are we going to attract customers, how we're going to advertise, how we're going to essentially make a profit out of whatever it is that you offer. But what we are not thinking about enough from an overall company strategy perspective, what is our overall loyalty strategy? How are we going to keep our customers? What it is about us that we can keep customers happy, keep customers here, and keep them coming back? And I think throughout our own research, we have come up with a couple of what we call defendable loyalty models. So these are the type of loyalty strategies that companies can potentially offer in order to defend their customers, essentially being able to keep their customers and being able to actually also grow their customers too. And we come up with 3 different types of defendable loyalty models. Now, my focus is only on one of them, but I wanted to quickly mention the other 2, kind of as an introduction to this. So one of the probably most discussed model is this meaning-based model. And this is essentially based on the idea that the brand stands for something, and that's meaningful to the individual or to a social group. A lot of times, for example, we use a brand and we continue to use a brand because that's something that we use when we were little. And so after we grow up, it's the nostalgic component to it and we continue to use it. And one of the brand I think stands very well for this meaning-based loyalty is the Lego brand. There are many Lego fans worldwide, and they're known for the interesting sets they have, the creativity it represents, and also the fun of coming up with finishing building a set, the gratification related to that, I don't think is matched by quite anything else. And within the loyalty program area, we also have seen more and more these meaning-driven type of loyalty programs. So this is an example of a TerraCycle program where they work with a lot of brand names to create recycling, particularly for packages that are typically not accepted in a recycle context. And so you can earn reward points by doing the recycling, and you can redeem your points to support some of the causes that are listed down here. So this is one type, which is meaning-based type of loyalty, where you create a meaningful connection with your customers and stands for something that your customers agree with or identify with. The other type is more of an ecosystem-based loyalty, where you're really building that loyalty using an extensive ecosystem around the brand, not only through yourself, but also through the partners. And what that basically creates is a very high switching cost. If customers are within your ecosystem and purchasing from your ecosystem, it's typically pretty difficult for the customer to switching out of the system and go with someone else. I think some of the typical examples that probably comes to mind when I talk about this would be Amazon, for example, with this vast network of sellers on the system. Uber or Lyft in the US would kind of be considered to be ecosystem based as well. And even for Apple, for example, with its App Store, extensive network of app developers, they all represent a good ecosystem-based loyalty model. And it's not just online either. So in the offline world, the most classical example of an ecosystem-based loyalty is the shopping malls. And I think some of you probably recognize this is the Mall Athens. And the shopping mall idea is that we have a network of different stores coming over here. Each of them has a unique appeal to the customer, and in conjunction together is a 1 + 1 more than 2 type of situation where customers get an enhanced experience because of all the partners within the network. And within the loyalty program, of course, we have been using this ecosystem-based idea for a very long time in terms of partnership, right? A lot of loyalty programs are partner with others. These are just some of the partners for Delta Airlines in the US, and Starbucks is a recent participant in this system. And you can essentially link your reward accounts with the different these different partners and being able to earn points or earn miles through the Delta SkyMiles program. So that moves to my third component, which is the automated model. Meaning-based loyalty is great if your product happens to be in the category where it makes sense to have that meaning, where people care about it enough to want to have a meaning associated with your brand. However, a lot of times we don't. Consumers don't necessarily care enough for certain product categories, for example, or for certain type of usage situations, they just really don't care enough to want to have that bounding meaning. And then ecosystem-based can also work in a situation where they don't really care enough. However, ecosystems generally are harder to build. It takes time, takes effort, takes resources. And so with all of that, we are left with a corner where when consumers don't really care enough, it's not a high involvement type of category. And you also don't necessarily have the time and effort to build that ecosystem-based loyalty. What do you do then? That's where the third component comes in, more of an automated loyalty model. And so this type of loyalty model is really building loyalty using more of a habit or inertia type of mechanism and building on the human tendency towards an inaction bias. The idea is basically that we have so many things that we have to do in daily life. We really don't want to have to think about everything, have to decide about everything. So as a result of that, we really want some decisions to be so easy that we don't even have to think about it. And so the idea of automated loyalty is exactly following that. So what I'm going to be talking about today is focus on this automated loyalty, specifically looking more at habit, and give you some ideas from research findings. What are some of the ways that loyalty programs can actually come in and help develop that automated loyalty in terms of consumer habit? And one word about why do we actually care about this habit? Because a lot of times we're talking about emotional connection, and habit does not really have that component to it. So it has its limitations. However, when you imagine what habit can do for your brand, imagine somebody goes to the grocery store and trying to buy cereals. They're faced with a vast shelf of many different brands, many different varieties to choose from. But if a consumer has a strong habit to just consume your particular brand of cereal, the shopping trip is going to look more like this, right? If you are a habitual Life cereal customer, then when you go to the grocery store, all you really see is that, those boxes over there, and then you would pick it up and then you are done. And more broadly, habit can generate a lot of significant business benefits. I'm not going to go over each of these points here, but the main idea is that if you are successful in building customer habit, in using your brand, in using your services, it can bring significant business returns in that process. And particularly, I would say now is a perfectly good time to be building customer habit. The last 2 years, we have all gone through a pandemic. And because of that, the stock out in the grocery stores, the store closures and so forth, we have all have our habits disrupted. So our routine way of doing things is changed. And the products we used to use may not necessarily be available during the pandemic and so forth. So consumers are a bit disoriented in some ways. And now that hopefully, with the vaccine and everything, that the pandemic is getting better, we are facing a better situation where we're falling back into a routine again in our life. And so as we do that, or as consumers do that, this is a great opportunity for companies to utilize this opportunity and develop some habits among their customers to help the company. In order to do that, you have to kind of understand what is really the components of habit, what I call habit recipe. Really, 3 different components are very important in developing habit. One is needs to be something that's done repeatedly. Right? You have to have a good amount of repetition for something to become a habit. 2, it needs to be a stable behavior that tends to happen within the same kind of context or circumstances. And number 3, it needs to not really involve much thinking. Remember, I said earlier that people really don't want to think. The reason we develop these habits so that we don't have to think. So a good example of thinking about this is your morning cup of coffee, right? If you have the habit of getting up in the morning, make yourself a cup of coffee and enjoying the coffee before you start the day. When you think about it, it's something you do daily, so it's high repetition. You're going to go to your kitchen at about the same time, assuming you get up at about the same time. That's a stable context. That is a very stable behavior. And also, you don't really have to think where your coffee pot is. What coffee that you wanted to brew is a fairly minimal decision process involved in that. It's a natural thing you just do every morning. And what do those components tell us about how you can use loyalty programs to develop habit? One of the good news with loyalty program as habit is that loyalty program by default is already a repetition-based mechanism, right? Most of the loyalty programs, you're not going to benefit much from it if you just buy once. Most of the time, you have to buy multiple times, and you have to earn points over the course of time in order to earn rewards. And therefore, that repetition component is already in there in most of the programs. But I would say that also as you run promotions for loyalty programs, think about building that repetition into the process. And I think Starbucks Rewards is a program that's very good at building these kind of repetition. This is an example about a product. They are trying to build a habit of consuming this product, and therefore they ask you, you can earn bonus points if you buy this particular product or products 3 times. And here's another example also from Starbucks Rewards. And it was recently actually offered to one of my students. And the idea here is that I want you to go to Starbucks every day, right? Creating a consistent behavior, creating a something that you are frequently doing. And if you do go 5 days in a row, you get 40 bonus stars. And not only can this be used to build habit in terms of through repetition, building new habit, but sometimes customers already have a habit. And in that situation, you might be able to expand their habit to create customer growth. I'll give you an example from one of our research projects. A lot of times gas purchase decisions, unless you're really price sensitive, you like to shop around for gas, for most of us, the decision to which gas station you go to, when you get gas and so forth is a very habit-driven decision with minimal decision-making process involved. However, for gas station operators, there's a dilemma involved because gas purchases, even if you come all the time, is not a highly profitable business. And instead, a lot of the gas stations actually have a side business associated with that. So in our research project, the gas station company also had convenience stores associated with each of its gas stations. And the products in the convenience stores are much more profitable. And so as a result of that, for customer growth purposes, what they wanted to be able to do is to bring the customer who go to the gas station all the time, bring them inside the store to also buy something from the store. And so we field tested a very simple, actually, promotional idea is to get people into the store. We used a product that most people would find some appeal for, which is water. And in one situation, or in half of the design, we asked people to tell them that you can buy 3 bottles of water and you're going to get 1 for free. And so pretty straightforward design, buy 3, get 1 free type of deal, in the hopes that if they want to get that 1 free bottle of water, they're going to come into the store. Now, the other counter-tested example with this is looking at buy 1 bottle of water each of the 3 visits, and then you get 1 bottle for free. And so the idea is that also buy 3, get 1 free, but this time you're going to have to come into the store 3 times to do that. And counterintuitive, you might think the one on the right side here, buy 1 bottle of water each of 3 times, is more effort for the customers. But we actually found that one to be more effective in the sense that, one, people are more consistently coming into the store and making purchases after the campaign was over. Number 2, the one on the left side, actually very sadly, for some of the fuel customers, they actually broke their habit in terms of coming in here to refill your car with the fuel. And so it broke some of the existing customers' habit versus the one asking them to repeat that behavior coming into the store every time they come to get their gas. That essentially expanded their habit of only getting gas, including both the gas as well as coming into store to get something, and it developed a much better, longer term habitual kind of behavior among the customers, and was able to increase the profitability of each of those customers. And so again, this kind of demonstrates to you the power of that repetition. Another component related to habit is to add stable contextual triggers into your process, whether that's promoting something to the customers, or that's related to your daily communication through your loyalty program. I'll give you one example to kind of give you an idea of what that stable contextual trigger is. I personally have a really big problem remembering to take my medication. Too many things going on in my mind, and frequently I forget. And so recently I have to basically have a medication that I have to take every day. And so what I basically did was tie that up with a dinner. So every day after dinner, I would tell myself I need to take medication. So after a few repetitions of that process, dinner, medication, and therefore it kind of creates a trigger and helped me to remember better to take the medication. And what can you use to create that contextual quick triggers with your customers? There are a variety of different ones to choose from. You can associate buying your product or consuming your product to specific days or specific time of the day. You can associate with specific locations. You can associate with who the consumer is with. And you can also associate it with specific events. For example, in my case, it will be dinner is something that I do before this habitual behavior I'm trying to develop. And so the important thing here is you wanted to customers not just to repeat the behavior, you want them to repeat the behavior under the same kind of circumstances. So you want them to repeat the behavior, for example, under the on the same day of the week, or you want the customer to do this at the same location where they would be. And here's an example of a practice where use time trigger to develop a habit. So this is, some of you may recognize this app, Duolingo app. It's a language learning app. And what is very interesting about the app is that it actually analyzes users' behavior and look at when you typically open up the app to try to learn a language. And then it will pop you a notification based on the time that you typically are available. And so what's interesting is that when consumers' life routine changes, they ended up going, typically open up the app now on a different time, the notification time actually switches with them. So the company is actually based their time trigger based on what the consumer's behavior is, doing some analytics related to that, and then pair the notification as a reminder for customers. So kind of using that time slot as a trigger and notification as a reinforcer of that. And location, we all have heard about proximity marketing, where consumers' mobile devices, you can use where they are as a location to remind them of certain things. Starbucks, for example, has notification if you're near a store, the app will come up and allow you to make purchases and so forth. And so what they're doing there is basically you are near any Starbucks store, but you can very well adapt that decision to individual customers to say, if you wanted to, the customers develop a habit associated with a specific location, you can essentially do that while the customer is close or within a certain distance from that particular location. So by timing or by doing your notification associated with specific location triggers, you can help customers better develop a habit into a stable type of behavior. And another component lesson that we have learned through our research is that there is such a thing as a habit shaping window. That would be the ideal scenario for a loyalty program to develop their customer habit. And what you are seeing here is basically a trajectory of how customer develop their habit after joining a loyalty program. And so on the horizontal here, when you see the 1, 2, 3, 4, that's basically the number of months the customer has joined the loyalty program. And on the vertical here, the higher the point, it basically represents a more stronger purchase habit associated with the company. And at the beginning of joining a loyalty program, what we typically see is a drop in habit. What happens is a new stimuli, the customer is facing something new, so they're gonna go exploring around, and that's where this low point happens with the habit strength. And that's actually what we call the habit shaping window. And the customer kind of trying to figure out things and knowing how they're going to utilize the program and so forth. And then once they figure things out, then they gradually, as you can see the trajectory, then it goes back up and eventually becomes a strong habit, hopefully strong habit to interact with your business and interact with your program. And so this habit shaping window is really important. And as a customer is first joining a loyalty program, during those initial weeks, initial month, it's important to develop these, using the methodology I just mentioned earlier, having the stable contextual cues to help them develop the habit, using repetition at the very beginning to help them develop a strong habit and shape what that habit actually involves. And here's an example of actually coupons that we received when my family first moved. And so it's from a local grocery store. And as you can see here, there's a repetition component to this, but there's also a timing component to it too, that it's trying to capture us while we're a new resident in the area that have not found a really favorite grocery stores at that point yet, to come to the store every week, get some promotion incentives at the beginning, and then, hopefully it will become a habit for us to go shop over there. So some of you might ask the question is that how long exactly is this habit shaping window? Unfortunately, there is not really a definitive answer to that. Some people say it takes 60 days for a habit to form, or roughly about that time frame. But I would say that it really depends on your business. The good news is that you can doing analytics based on your customer behavior data to tell you when this turning point is, where people's habit is just going straight up versus when they're in the exploration stage. But as a general rule, I will say that if you are a very frequently purchased category, people are going to develop the habit faster because there's more repetition. Or if you're facing a customer who buys a lot, a heavy buyer, that typically you would also have a shorter window to be able to shape their habit. That gets me to my final point here, which is we are all aware of this phrase, I think, therefore I am. Unfortunately, when it comes to habit development, the more you think, the more you're not going to, or the less you're able to develop into habitual behavior. That's one of the dilemmas related to loyalty programs and habit. Loyalty program, as I mentioned earlier, is a great mechanism for developing habit. And the process in doing that is you ask people to repeatedly do something. You give them a little reward, and hopefully that encourages them to continue that behavior. The problem is that that itself is not necessarily enough to develop into a habit behavior. Remember, I mentioned earlier that habit should be minimal thinking. It should be something that's automatic. And so as long as the customer have a very high awareness of the fact that their behavior is leading to the rewards, you are not on the right path to necessarily be able to develop a strong habit. When does it become a habit is when the customer sort of kind of forget that this is actually happening and are not really, thinking so much about going for the rewards and so forth. That's the point when you actually develop a strong habit. And so there are some things that in loyalty program design that would facilitate that. Specifically in our research, we have found that if habit is your main goal, right? Habit development, you are in a low involvement category. People generally don't really care so much. You wanted to offer the more frequent, lower value rewards rather than having a less frequent, more value rewards. And so the two examples over here, also trajectory of people developing their habit after joining a loyalty program. You can see that for the program on the right side, where you issue monthly rewards and 500 points translates into a lower dollar amount, is actually better at developing customers' habit faster. And so of course, this doesn't necessarily mean that this lower value design is better for everyone. It really depends on your loyalty program goal. I think one of the earlier presentation talk about this, identify the goal of your loyalty program. And that's exactly the same thing here. If habit is one of your main mechanism you wanted to do, choose the frequent lower value rewards. But probably if you are trying to build that emotional connection, the more experiential, the more significant rewards will work better in that situation. So this does depend on the kind of program that you actually want to create, the kinds of relationship you wanted to have with your customers. And so just a quick summary here. One important thing to remember, the two components to habit is repetition and stability. So you want people to repeat doing something that you want them to do, and you want them to do it under a stable context. You wanted to reward small instead of big, maybe even in the situation where you start by rewarding and then you take that reward away as a temporary kind of program within the program type of situation. And ultimately, what you wanted to be thinking about is automaticity. Automatic thinking, or actually no thinking, minimal thinking, the less the consumer have to try to figure things out, the better you are with being able to develop habit. We do have an article on this. So if you wanted to go read some more information about customer habit and how to navigate that customer habit disruption, I provide the link over here. So I think it's time to take some questions.
Thank you very much for this excellent presentation, Dr. Liu-Thompkins. Dear Yuping, You talked about the habit shaping window at the beginning of a consumer's membership. What happens after this period of time, and what if the consumer has been there for a while and is already habitual?
That's a good question, because a lot of programs are probably facing customers who have been in the program for a while. And what do you do actually during that time frame? I think there are a couple of things. One of the things, as an example of the gas station, that example that I mentioned earlier, after the customer settle into a particular habit, it's still possible to expand that habit. The only caution is that in that process, you wanted to do it gently. You want to pair the new thing that you want customer to also do on top of what they existing do. So you wanted to associate with the same contextual cues. You wanted to add that as a pairing. So for example, going into the store while you are adding the gas. So that's one thing you can do. And the other thing is, I would also say that don't necessarily communicate too much with the customers who are strongly habitual, because sometimes actually some of those communications can potentially trigger a habit disruption, make them think about something, and that can easily break down an existing strong habit. So there are different strategies that you can follow for those customers who have been in the program for a while. And then of course, if you're redesigning your program, as one of the topics mentioned earlier, is that if you're redesigning your program, that's actually a time that potentially will kind of break down habit again. And so you have an opportunity to shape existing customers' habit, kind of opening up a new window for habit shaping.
Okay, thank you very much. Is it possible to combine the habit-focused approach with the meaning-based loyalty model that you talked about earlier in your presentation?
I would say probably yes. There are some limitations to that, because the whole point of meaning-based model is that it creates that emotional connection. It creates that, there is that thinking and feeling process involved. However, I do understand the limitation that in the real world, a lot of times some brands would have to do both. And so in that situation, I would say it relies on the customer segmentation, the way you communicate with customers, the customer who are buying because of the meaning for the brand versus customers who are buying because of a strong habit. And analytically, there are ways to tell those customers. So you can communicate with them differently and try to emphasize different elements of the program to these customers to achieve kind of a joint presence of these different loyalty models.
Okay, thank you. And one last one. Are more transactional loyalty programs better at building habits?
Good question. Probably, I would say that the depends on the design of the transactional program, right? So if you are only offered discount every time people are making a purchase, I don't necessarily think that's really a habit forming type of program. If you are designing, if your reward is really significant, where people are constantly vying after that reward, that could also not necessarily be very good for a habitual type of development. So it really needs to have that repetition component. It needs to have that stable context component kind of associated with it to create the eventual automatic type of without thinking type of loyalty.
That is what we need. We need to make customers do, to be automatic, I mean.
Yep. That is, and I think, we can see that from the success of subscription-based programs, right? A lot of subscription-based program is you make a decision, then you sort of just go along with that. It's an automatic process. You don't really have to think about it anymore.
Habit is a powerful element, and I think companies should, try to focus more on that. And your presentation was really, really good, because you also provided a lot of many results from your research and the research that has been done in the past. And we thank you very, very much for that. And
Thank you.
We thank you for your participation here with us today. And
Thank
we
you.
hope
Very
that
happy
we can
to be here.
cooperate with you again in the future. And we apologize for the delay.
Yeah, no problem at all. I hope everybody found the presentation helpful. Thank you.
I'm sure they did. Thank you very, very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Bye.